Hello, everybody. Heard some chatter about the Grand Traverse. Really great.
We're going to have like an epic squad at the Traverse.
Rolling deep.
Rolling
seven deep at the Grand Traverse this weekend. That's awesome. Excited for you guys. I've done that race like 2 or 3 times.
I've only done the like alt route.
Mm-hmm. That's a good race. I wish they had done that again.
I just love running around Crested Butte.
Yeah.
45 miles is pretty different than 40, though, I'll say.
Yeah, that's a long.
It's a different race.
It's a very different race. Yeah, for sure. Well, there's plenty of climbing on the
technically during a 40-mile race, when you get to mile 40 and you have yet to reach the last aid station, you're like, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Like, is this accidentally a 50-mile race? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, we don't really, just, we were just talking earlier about how we wish we could be at the finish line of that race to see you guys come in, but we're actually going to be going to the Front Range this weekend, which, we have a team meetup happening on Sunday. It's in the newsletter. It's on Facebook. It's been there for a few weeks. Hope you guys read that information. We take the time to write it. Hope you take the time to read it. If you can make it, we really want to see you and hang out with you guys.
My friend Tina Muir will be coming with us.
A little lunch, a little run. People can hike with me.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure. We're both recovering.
I'll probably do my run before. Very short.
I think I'm just doing like 4 miles.
Yeah, so. I'm on the recovery train.
Yeah.
Getting everybody together and hope to see you guys there. And we have a lot of people in the Boulder area. I'm actually surprised that we don't have. I would like to see the whole Boulder crew make it, but we'll see. It's a busy weekend, holiday weekend.
Busy weekend. Everyone's busy grandly traversing.
Yeah.
Didn't think that.
It's a good, even if you just want to come up, walk for half an hour, shake the legs out a little bit.
Get like a coffee after.
Get a coffee or a lunch after something. You're more than welcome. Doesn't have to be it's not a training run, If you've got hills, do them before or do them after.
Yeah, if you're coming like ready and excited to try to I don't know.
We're not going
feisty on climbs.
It's an easy run. It's a no drop run.
Yeah.
Last time we split up into 2 groups, kind of had the run walkers with me and the steady runners with Zoe. So we'll probably do something similar.
Yeah. Hopefully this year there's not a fire that gets put out by a freak snowstorm.
I was trying to remember when that was that we went out there.
It was October, and we both were like so unprepared. The only winter gear I had in my car was like a vest that Brooks had sent me. So I'm running in like a sports bra and a down vest and like some gloves that I had found in the Subaru.
That was brutal. I remember that
cold day. It was very wet. It was a wet cold.
And that was when that huge fire started. That was over near Estes.
Mm-hmm.
That was just crazy. And that whole thing started in a snowstorm.
Yeah.
That's how crazy the weather's been. That doesn't bring up some existential dread. I don't know what does. Well, cool. Yeah. In other news, we got our buffs in. This is in the package. I have not had time to open them up, but
I think that's the.
Oh, right. See how tired
it's like the world's worst unboxing video.
I hope if you guys are interested, we've got these on the website now. We don't make money off these. They're more just for you guys and for us to wear, but they're pretty sweet. I'm pretty stoked on them.
Yeah.
Sometime soon in the future, Coach Drew and I are one of our pet projects right now is working on getting shirts for everybody too.
Shirts.
It's all in the works. We just work a little slower than other people.
Yeah.
We really take our time with these things, but very happy with these made by Boko Gear, which is a sweet. They made our hats also, which many of you guys already have. And I think, gosh, perfect timing for the buff. because at least for me, fall is like buff weather, summer is hat weather. Like I keep my
ears. Have like the Euro.
Yeah, I got to keep my ears warm. Yeah. My ears just get too cold in the fall. I wear gloves with a t-shirt and a buff. Super funny. Yeah, I don't know, we didn't have a whole lot prepared for the Monday calls, but we were maybe gonna recap our races this weekend. Had a lot of athletes inquiring about how all of that went.
It went long.
It was a long day. Yeah.
It was very long.
But yeah, we had mentioned a couple calls ago that this was kind of like the big race for Zoe and I for the summer. You know, I think both of us tend to approach our racing pretty methodically. Like we tend to pick like one focus race per season. You know, Zoe had a spring focus race. We had a couple small races earlier in the summer that kind of led up to this race. And then, you know, Zoe, you got a big 100-miler in November, which is kind of like a fall focus race. And then I have a 50-miler at the end of October.
I'm just going to sleep all winter.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, other people do it differently. They race more often. But I think we tend to, with our schedules and whatnot, tend to put a lot of eggs in one
and
basket.
Particularly if you're racing at the ultra, like 50K plus distance, you just, you know, even the most experienced athletes, like you saw how many folks tried to flip it around from Western states or Hard Rock to UTMB. And then you had a bunch of people either DNS or, you know, DNF. And for me, I do not want to find out that I did too much at mile 40 of a race. You know, I want to make that decision preemptively, not like in Italy.
Yeah, that was an interesting, gosh, yeah, we should talk a little bit about UTMB too. I feel like, because we both definitely were heavy spectators.
I feel like I felt like my most addict self when we got up at 3 a.m. to get ready for our race. And our first thought was like, let's check on Courtney. And like, where's Jim?
And we literally put the live stream on in our like tiny hotel room while we're both getting ready.
It reminded me of like every time, like when I'll make a date to like get coffee with someone, and then I have to make myself coffee before I meet someone for coffee because I'm addicted. And that's what it felt like. Like, oh, before I go trail run for 10 plus hours, I need to watch some trail running.
Yeah, it was good.
You know, you're in deep.
Yeah, I know. Earlier in the week when they didn't have the live stream going for TDS, that was the first thing that we really programmed into.
I think they should have.
It was
disappointing,
right? Yeah, definitely. But getting to see some of CCC was really cool. You know, particularly some things that like really stood out to me that I kind of carried with me into the racing weekend. Was just this idea of like really starting easy,
Scotty Cocker style,
super, super easy. And then just continually working your way up through the field. And I was definitely thinking a lot about like Scotty Hawker at CCC. Also, you know, something that is really cool about Scotty that so many people don't really realize is that
he's a cool dad.
Yeah, well, he's a great dad. He doesn't run a lot of volume. You know, he runs, you know, maybe 50, 60 miles a week, which at that level is, quite honestly, it's like 50% of the volume that most elite male runners are running at that level.
Especially the European
especially
kind of
the
style.
Euros. Yeah, totally.
It's like you'll have guys doing like 100, 120 mile weeks and then cross training like crazy too.
Yeah. And so, you know, I'm personally right now in my coaching, I'm working with a few athletes I think who are struggling to come to terms with what training really looks like for them with with the circumstances of their lives, with their other responsibilities and their other priorities. So I just, you know, I feel like those kind of, those athletes who are out there doing so well and they're running half the volume as everybody else are just showing you that it's not about the volume. It doesn't have to be about the volume. If you're willing to work at something for a long time, if you're willing to prioritize quality of effort over the quantity of those efforts, I think you can have a lot of success and you can start to reinvent what you think, your training is supposed to look like. Even if you want to run 100K, CCC, 100 miles, UTMB, whatever it is, you can do that and you can just run 50 miles a week, 40 miles a week, 60 miles a week, maybe peaking, and be strong and even be competitive and come from behind and get second place at a race. Super, super inspiring performance. We're also seeing that also, with Courtney and Francois and other great runners at UTMB who all started significantly slower than a lot of other competitors out there. And although Courtney, she did lead for the women, but if you really watched her and you looked at her splits, she wasn't
faster.
Right. The back but it's all about, okay, let me just, you can tell if you're experienced in this, you can tell who's working really hard and you can tell who is not. And that's not in training, that's in racing. You can tell who's putting forth a big effort and you can tell who is relaxed. And it's really important. I think, that was something that I thought about a lot during my race. And I thought about that while I looked at Francois and UTMB, when I looked at Courtney, very, very relaxed early in the race. She might've been in first, but she was relaxed. She was saving a lot for later. And that is really, 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 really key in the longer events. So another thing that kind of came to mind for me.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, maybe like mile 2 or 3, TJ passed me. I realized I accidentally started a little ahead of him, is how relaxed he was taking things, which has never once happened in a race before.
Oh, so funny.
My headlamp died. And at one point someone passed me and their headlamp was really bright. And I was like, oh, that's TJ.
That was such a funny start. Oh man, that was such a fun race.
Pro tip, charge your headlamp the night before and not the morning of.
Yeah. Wish we had figured that out at 3 instead of 4:15.
Yeah, same.
45 minutes before the race started. Gosh, yeah. And have a backup headlamp in case your go-to headlamp is in charge. Because your backup headlamp, the batteries were dead.
Yeah.
I checked it. Silly.
I'm bad at racing.
Yeah. You Grand Traversers, I think you guys have like a 5 or 6 a.m. start. You'll be running a little bit in the dark. Mm-hmm. Make sure your headlamp works. It helps. The beginning of that run, especially the cattle guard, is pretty sketchy if you don't have light. I would recommend bringing.
And start slow on that road. People are going to go super fast and you're going to look at them and you're going to say, I will see you in Aspen, asshole. I think you want to go 7-minute pace at the beginning of the Grand Traverse. Don't do it.
Yeah. So gosh, maybe back to Scotty Hawker for a second. I think, we've definitely seen this too with other, with some female athletes like Claire. She's not like traditionally always running very high volume, but she did really well at Western States. And David had spoke about her running basically 40, 50, and maybe max 60 miles a week, preparing for that win at Western States. And I think there's always, and man, I don't know what it was about last week, but in my own coaching, I was working on this with several different athletes. But there's always this emphasis when it comes to looking at how other athletes are doing and seeing their volume and being like, I am not enough because I am not running that kind of volume. And that mindset can really throw an athlete just through the kind of introspective ringer of self-criticism. And I just want to highlight, don't fall prey to that. You don't have to do a ton of volume to be really successful.
In fact, it can be hugely counterproductive. I think Steve Magnus, one of our favorite coaches to follow, had a really excellent Instagram post that said, bragging about running 120 miles a week is like bragging about working 80 hours a week. I don't care how much you work. The only thing that matters is the quality of the work that you do. And that's, exactly how running is. Sure, I could probably bang out a 120 mile training week, but I would be utterly destroyed and a shell of a human at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it wouldn't be productive. I would just be really good at either injuring myself, making myself ill, or like developing counterproductive fatigue resistance.
Yeah. So again, I think the message really is like, don't overemphasize the volume that you're doing, emphasize how, the quality of those efforts. I've had athletes this week that are really getting down on themselves for missing a few runs. And just when life circumstances and happenings come up and just like really legitimate stuff, not just like, well, I didn't get around to it, or, oh, I just, it just didn't really happen, which are kind of some excuses that we get. And then I kind of roll my eyes to. But like when really real life stuff happens, it's so important to give yourself that break.
Yeah.
Because if you can get out the door for 30 minutes and it feels good on a busy day, a stressful day, something happens that really sends your life into a whirlwind, 30 minutes is perfect. Sometimes rest is better. So the next day you get out there and you feel fresh. If you're really pushing to just get that run in every time that, life is happening and things are really stressful, the quality of your runs deteriorate. You start to develop, a negative association between the training and all of that. And then I think burnout really starts to kind of creep in, which is something that we discussed last week. So again, it's important to hold yourself accountable. And as a coach, I'll probably call you out if I think your excuse is BS. And most of the time, most athletes' excuses are not. But the issue always is you don't give yourself enough grace. You don't realize I'm sitting here behind the computer and I'm like, holy crap, you are going through something. This is a really tough moment for you or your family or whatever. And you're beating yourself up about not getting out for 60 minutes or the run feeling bad and it wasn't good enough. And it almost makes me sad because
we're not drill sergeants.
Yes. And running it's only running, right? There's so much more than just running. So you hold that training loosely. But if you're on the other side of that and your excuse is well, my friends were in town, I didn't run, or I was traveling, I didn't run. Well, I have a lot of athletes who travel and don't miss a single run. I have a lot of athletes who train when they go on vacation. A lot of athletes who are full-time parents working a job, they've got 3 kids, they don't miss a run,
Or when they do miss a run, they don't beat themselves up over it because they know they genuinely did their best and they stay quite consistent.
Yeah. And I think that perspective and knowing kind of where to draw that line is just so important, especially when we're talking about emphasizing the quality of the runs and not the volume. Because if you just get out there consistently, even 20, 30 minutes when life is crazy, that helps to reinforce all of the neuro pathways that you're building. And there's a reason why we don't want you to rest the day before your race, right? There's there are actual principles behind all of these things, why you're really only taking one extra rest day in your taper, or some athletes don't rest at all during their taper. They run just less. And it's because of the neuro pathways that you're building every time you run. And when you're running more frequently, even if it's not for higher amounts of volume or longer periods of time, generally you feel more efficient and the running feels better. And when things feel better, the training is more beneficial. So yeah, I think, just that was on my mind so much last week, looking at, the results at UTMB, everything that was happening over there. And then just some stuff that was happening, with this community, with this team. Even if you're one of those athletes who's kind of struggling to draw the line and say, okay, enough is enough with my excuses. I know I need to be running more consistently. I need to be taking 5 minutes to reflect on my runs and log in the training logs. So that way, my coach and I can have a beneficial dialogue and they can tailor the programming for me. Even if that sounds like forgive yourself for that, but let's try to move forward and build. Because without that, if you just let it all go, sometimes I wonder what the point is really. And I think that is something else that, we've really been thinking about, Zoe and I. It's just, if something that's really worth doing, it's worth doing it consistently. And it's really worth doing it for a long period of time, so you become great at it.
Yeah. Seamless transition. How long were you training for TMR? Like, how long was that your goal? How many years?
TMR has been, that's been my goal since 2018 when I first heard about that race. I was at Power of Four, and an athlete that I really looked up to was training for that race and had mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, I got to check that out. That's a really serious race. That's kind of when it all started for me, 2018. So that's been a 3 to 4 year journey.
Yeah.
For one race.
Yeah.
Essentially, which is a really long time to commit to one goal.
How do you stay focused on a goal for that long without getting counterproductively obsessed? Because I think, there's a fine line, right?
Yeah. I'm just not an obsessive person. Maybe I am very fortunate to not have that, that mentality maybe, or that kind of compulsion. But I think also, having a lot of intermediate goals really, really helps. Right. And spreading out, spreading that commitment out. And so in 2019, I ran the race, and although it's a similar course, but much different in the way that the course was laid out this year. But yeah, I ran in 2019, and I had a challenging day and was in second place for the majority of that race, and then ended up finishing in fourth. Really struggled with the heat and really struggled on some of the runnable terrain that was later in the race. And as a result of that, just didn't have quite the day, just didn't put it all together, worked well through the challenges, but learned a ton. And then what happened in 2020? Oh, the pandemic, right? Yep. So that's why there was no Telluride mountain run. Yeah. And then this year we were up at 6 a.m. To get the only spots that were left available. We were the first people to register for just a handful of spots to get into that race.
It's a race that a lot of people in December think they want to do, but by the time August rolls around, they're like,
Yeah, I mean,
I thought that was an interesting component of it.
Yeah, it's
the entry list had some high turnover.
It did this year. It did. And people, it's one of those races that really has to be respected. I don't necessarily think you need to spend 4 years training for it to do it, but maybe to do it really well, I needed to spend 4 years doing it. But everybody's kind of, journey or the way that they approach their goals is different. And I'm very long-term focused. But yeah, I mean, I think the motivation really was just that I picked the goal that was right for me. And that, is just another one of our kind of, guiding principles. That was kind of a thing that we were thinking about with this week's newsletter. Is just making sure, if you're picking a long-term goal, something that really resonates deeply with you, your values, your why, something that allows you to train in the ultimate place that you always want to be training. All of that is so important, right? I often have athletes sign up for these races, and then they ask me what they should be doing on their long run. And I'm like, why is this a question? Because you're training what you do on your long run. That's the longest run of the week. That run should be what makes you happiest and should be the most fun, because that's your longest run. You're spending the most time doing that run. And why wouldn't that directly be correlated to the goal that you have coming up? Why wouldn't they be one and the same? And so I know that not everybody has access to, say, running in the mountains in Carbondale, or being able to take a few trips to Telluride a year to spend time on the course like I've done. But, it's not easy to pick up and move on a Friday and, to do all that. And it's a big commitment to spend the entire weekend out training 4 hours from where you live and camping and whatnot. And so there's, other sacrifices, I think, that happen behind the scenes that go into, my preparation for a race like this. But yeah, I mean, for me, like it was no effort, because the runs that I enjoy doing in training are the same runs that I enjoy doing in racing. So they're one and the same. And so like, there's always that excitement. There's always that stoke. There's always that element of adventure. Yeah. And so like, that kind of helps,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that made sense, but
totally. Chris asked, you took more time to run the race this year than last year. That is because they pretty radically changed the course. They added a 4,000-foot climb in the last 10 miles, which
yeah.
And then a descent down. You used to descend down the ski resort, but that's too easy. So now you have to go up the ski resort, and then you descend down just this heinous technical freaking overgrown AF trail. Like, yeah, it's never great when I'm like descending and I realize I'm running like 10-minute miles, but I'm like penning it because it's so technical.
Yeah, they made so that there was some significant changes to the course between 2019 and this year.
So technically he has the course record now, is what I'm saying.
Technically, but someone's going to need to race next year and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think someone could be faster, to be honest.
Someone's always going to be faster.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, you spend a lot of time training for something, and the week before the race, 4 days before the race, you find out they changed the entire course. So that is always surprising.
Because we had been practicing starting all of our long runs going up to the ski resort.
Right.
Because like that's how the race used to start. And it was like, we're just going to get really good at doing this climb. But it's very different to do it at mile 38 than it is at mile 1. Yeah.
A long climb like that, very steep, not really runnable at all.
Yeah.
Totally different. But you train for long enough.
Exactly. It's not, I mean, I think at the end of the day, when like we realized the course was changed, I was like, this is honestly better because now I'm not going to overthink it and try to, and honestly, like, I thought I did really great on that last climb. So I was like, oh, it's super straightforward. Like, I'm not even going to try to run a single inch of this because that's not what's going to work.
Yeah.
I mean, so like there was no mental aspect of like, what should I be doing here? It's like, I know that I'm committing to hiking for probably an hour and 10 minutes.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, I couldn't wait to get to that last climb.
Yeah. I was like, this is going to be relaxing. Cause like,
there was no running. It was just pure hiking.
And there's no like route. It's very straightforward. And I think that, when you feel physically good, it's really nice to take that like mental load off to like, just be able to be like, I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah. And I think, honestly, big goals. I don't expect every one of my athletes to like own a big goal in the way that I do. Everybody's athletic kind of journey and the time that they can put into these things is different. And I, obviously this is a huge part of my life and the life that I want to have. So that's why it's my priority. But, just knowing the course, even if that means just like spending time with the profile or like going over the course description. These race directors spend a lot of time writing out like the description of like each leg in between each aid station to aid station. And you can learn a lot by reading that. Like at first glance, the 42-mile loop or whatever that we did in Telluride over the weekend looked really, really similar to the one I did in 2019. But when I read the course description, I immediately knew it was a completely different race. And so had I just glossed over that, I would have had, to have dealt with some very unexpected changes on race morning. So, taking the time and then kind of like visualizing that, I think a big part of race preparation for me and something that I constantly point my athletes to is having, you know, in the week before your race or even 2 weeks before the race, is spending time visualizing just how you're going to execute specific parts of your race. And that race was, it's very specific what you need to do at that race. You know, it starts out with a 4,000 foot climb up to 13,000 feet, then a very technical long descent, then another 3,000 foot climb with a very long class 3 ridge for 1.5 miles, and then a long technical descent, and then a shorter but steeper climb, and then a super short 2 mile but very steep descent, and then a lot of runnable terrain before the last climb. And so, like, knowing that, I really spent a lot of time visualizing exactly how I would run each section of that race, particularly kind of that really steep but short mountain pass until the last long climb. You know, that was the crux area of the race for me. That's when I, you know, moved up from being in 5th position to in 1st, and then, you know, gained maybe 3 or 5 minutes on the guy in 2nd. And then at the last aid station, you know, we were 3 minutes apart. And then by the top of the mountain, I was 15 minutes ahead of him. And so, you know, then the race was basically a sealed deal. But it was, you know, that preparation where I knew, you know, people were going to probably struggle on this really steep pass, because I made an assumption that most people would run the first part of the race too fast and then not have enough legs for that steep climb. And it's true, I passed them on the uphill, and then I ran very easy the downhill. But, you know, when you're really tired from a long climb, it's very hard to find the turnover on a steep downhill. So you tend to really back off, which I was able to take advantage of that. And then in the runnable terrain, you know, all the economy work that we do, all the strides for years,
because you can be incredibly fit, but if your running economy sucks, then when you finally get to like a flat part of the course, you can't hide.
Yeah, you're just struggling.
Like, you can, maybe someone who's really fit can out power hike me, but they can't outrun me 50K into a race.
Yeah. And it, you know, it's interesting. I think for me, it was interesting to see some of that difference. Like, my economy was really good in 2019, but even since then has improved so much. You know, I took like 40 minutes off my time in that section of the course, which is like pretty absurd to be able to do that. I definitely didn't think that I was going to run that section like 30, 40 minutes faster that I had done like 2 years ago. But, you know, again, like when you start slow, you really ease in, you know, you let other people go out, maybe go a little hard. Maybe you're reading their body language. Like, I could really tell that some of those guys were just going too fast. Haven't been around the sport for so long. And yeah, just trust your plan.
Yeah. Go slow.
Trust your training.
The race doesn't start till halfway. Like, I always pass people on the second half. Like, I've never been leading or in the top 2 of a race till about halfway.
Yeah, I have to say I'm often susceptible to wanting to run in front. And I've done that plenty of races, and it's doesn't always end the way that I want it to. But I think, in these longer events particularly, I think like 50K and more, it can be so beneficial, especially when there's a lot of hiking involved. And really steep downhill running. Everybody just tends to run it too hard.
Yeah.
They don't realize how much that taxes your body towards the end of the run. You've done those 3 mountain passes, you've done the 3 descents too hard. Then all of a sudden you can't run those flats. You can't run the rolling terrain. Every little short 50-foot uphill is a nag, and you walk it instead of running it at 11 minutes.
Right. You maybe saved like 2 minutes on the downhill by putting your hand a little bit close to the flame on the downhill.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to the easy stuff, you're like, oh God, I don't have legs.
Yeah. And that definitely happened to me when I previously ran the race. And I
because really you're very good at downhill running. Right. So you have to like actively slow yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I was listening to Dylan Bowman's podcast. He kind of recapped Hard Rock 100 a few weeks ago, his like awesome race there. And he had mentioned like his strategy at Hard Rock was to like run the downs really easy, but to like take it like 2 steps slower than easy. So it's like what was comfortable and then go even slower off of that. And you know, his idea there was to be able to have the legs later to be able to kind of like still hike strong, and to still be able to run some of those downhills. And you can imagine, I mean, I only did TMR. He did Hard Rock, which is like TMR times 3 or whatever. You know, it's TMR all day long. And
27 hours.
So like, yeah,
for women. Yeah.
23 to 27 hours. So, you know, I think, I definitely drew kind of some inspiration from that, like, you know, seeing other strong runners like really like emphasize just taking it easy in the beginning of a race and not being susceptible to all of that kind of that energy that's there at the start of the race where everybody wants to go hard. And like, you know, for me, you know, seeing like the guy who won in 2019 go out like really fast on Saturday morning and 25, literally 25 headlamps in front of me. And I was way in the back, and just seeing him running. And I'm like, you know, how many times have I gone up Telluride Mountain Resort running? And I'm like, none. I've never done it. I'm not even on a training run. And I have some of the strongest individual segment times out there because I've done the course so many times. And I just knew, like, don't run this. Don't be susceptible to that energy that exists there at the beginning of the race where everybody.
If you see other people going hard or doing something and they're doing it confidently, it's not because they actually know what they're doing.
It might not be. I mean, but sometimes.
I mean, maybe, but like, I don't know, every time I
get
like
away with it.
You see people go out in the race and I'm like, if that's the effort level you can sustain for 10 hours, like good on you, you're a super athlete and I'll see you at the finish line. But on the off chance that you're a mortal like me, you know, it'll be really interesting at halfway.
And me.
And
yeah, gosh, I feel like, anyways, I don't want to spend so much time talking about myself. It makes me feel uncomfortable, but
I just there's a lot of interesting lessons learned from it.
Yeah, I guess
it was a three-year process.
At least,
I mean, we went to Telluride, I mean, like at least 15 times to like train for this. And because it's fun and they have good pizza.
Yeah. There's a quick question in here, actually a really good question about adjusting your plan based on how you're feeling. Yeah, I mean, of course, it's vital to adjust your plan, but I would not go harder because you feel better at the beginning of a race. That is probably counterproductive. You know, again, when you're talking about races, my race was 9 hours long. It ended with an 1 and 20-minute long climb and a 48-minute descent, very steep technical. Like if you don't have legs for that, because you felt extra good at the beginning of the race, so you went fast, you know, that climb's going to take you 2 hours. That descent's going to take you 1 hour and 30 minutes, you know, whatever it is. Rough numbers, you know, depending on the person and your pain tolerance levels. But like I think honestly, like you can always go faster later in a race, particularly in the second half. Like I was 20 miles into the race when I moved into first place. And that's where I really started racing. I ran the whole beginning of the race very, very easy. Everybody I passed was at an easy effort. And I'm running 40 miles. So you have to make a judgment call on what that feels like to you. And for me, when I think easy, I think no resistance on the legs, you know, no heavy breathing at all. Very deep inhalation, exhalation. Even at 13,000 feet, you know, going up very high, I'll just dial the effort back to keep my breathing centered. And something that I really noticed in my race performance is that, you know, in previous races, when I get tired, I have a very hard time regulating my breath rate and my heart rate late into races. I know that I'm working really hard when I can't get back down, where I'm just constantly elevated. And in this race, I was particularly, I think, lucky because I I just executed the plan well and I had a good day. But I never had to deal with that until, you know, the last 4 miles of the race when I was really going all out, you know, because I still had, and on the last climb, you know, towards the top, I was able to go as hard as I could essentially and leave everything out there because I had still gauged the effort correctly and just continue to build the momentum throughout the day rather than just kind of going all in early and then just hoping to hang on.
Zach Miller style.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I mean, I'm not as talented as Zach, you know, like some of these guys are just such machines. They do that and they either blow up or they have these epic races. I've always kind of been a middle of the road, middle of the way, kind of try to have that even keel.
I think for me, like, I just try to be really intentional about the race plan. And like, when I'm thinking about how I'm going to execute a race, I'm not like, oh, I'm feeling good, so I'm going to go faster here. It's like, what do I do here that best serves Zoe 5 hours from now? You know? So like, if I feel bad, or if I feel like tired or bonky, or like I'm not doing great on the uphills, I'll adjust my plan to serve the latter half of the plan. So I'm never actually changing the plan. The plan is just to be able to execute the plan later. Yeah. That's always the plan.
Yeah. I love Eric. He just mentioned that he walked the first mile of Bighorn, which is a really serious 100 that he did earlier in the year. Yeah. I mean, like, honestly, doing that, the first hour of these really long races matters so much. If you go too hard in that first hour, it's almost completely impossible to undo that. Especially if you get close to lactic threshold. If your heart rate is really, really getting up there, all of a sudden your body is going to be like, ooh, I just want lots of sugars today. And I'm going to feel bonky all day long as a result of going too hard. So, you know, I really feel like, guys, like, and anybody who's running Grand Traverse this weekend, first hour, super chill. You're going to have a long climb up to like Star Pass. You know, there you can start to, like, you know, maybe move things along and start to build the momentum a little bit more. But don't get tracked in that, like, going hard in the first hour when you're going underneath Mount Crested Butte, and don't go too hard on that dirt road. Remember that long dirt road? It's the same thing in this course, same road. You know, everybody's wants to run that really fast. And I'm telling you, if you go easier in that race early on, first hour, especially when you get on Richmond Ridge and it's grindy and rolly for 12 miles, you are going to be so thankful that you have those legs, that you went.
It's just like going to be carnage everywhere.
Yeah, because it's those, at least for me, and because I really prefer either straight up or straight down. When things are rolling and I don't feel good, I'm so susceptible to walking every single one of those 50-foot rollers. And when you do that, you waste so much time. So yeah, I'm a big believer in the slow start. You know, one of my athletes, Domenico, had an amazing race at Kodiak. He had a very similar approach at that race. You know, he started way back, ended up finishing in second. We saw that at UTMB. Francois, he started way back, you know, and he finished first, crushed everybody per usual. You know, going out hard in the beginning and then fading hard. It's not
legend.
Yeah, and everybody will experience that. We all have gone.
We've all done that. Yeah.
But, I would recommend, like, if there's any question, am I going too fast right now? Go slower.
Yeah. It reminds me when I went too fast at Leadville, which caused it, well, amongst other things, caused a DNF years ago. I remember I was running with a guy and he was like, how do you feel? And I was like, I actually feel really good. And he said, don't worry, it'll pass, which I think is like, you know, that's like how it goes. You'll feel really good, but don't let that dictate your whole plan.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's like only spending money when you have money. It's not a great way to do it. You should have like an actual budget. You should stick to your budget and like plan ahead and know yourself. Like, do the least sexy, most boring thing possible.
Yeah, gosh.
Start slow.
Did plenty of that in training leading up to this race as well. Had quite a few very unsexy not so good races and long runs for me.
Yeah.
That was tough.
Had some horrific long runs. You had some really challenging races.
God, my self-belief was challenged a lot this summer.
How did you come back from that?
I don't know. You know, it's just being willing to just step back up into the batter's box and go again and swing hard. I think that just having that, I don't want to give up mentality, grit or resilience, I think people could call it. Yeah, I'm not really a person to kind of like give up when things get tough. You know, I might have an emotional reaction, but usually then I calm down and I'm like, okay, put your head down, get back in there. Yeah, particularly, you know, Aspen Backcountry Marathon, really bad race for me. Not competitive, didn't feel good, a big underperformance. But just worked really hard to reframe that effort and use it kind of as a way to like move towards this run. I think that was really important. It could have been very self-defeating. But I think that's a choice, you know, that you make. And when given the opportunity, you know, between two choices, I think one is a higher choice. The other is a lower choice to beat yourself up over a poor race, or to say that was a great training day, a great opportunity to deal with feeling uncomfortable.
Bad races are great training days.
They are. I mean, they really are. And everything, I really believe that like all of the efforts are really cumulative, right? So like, you know, Telluride Mountain Run, like I've run a lot of races. I've done thousands and thousands of miles. All of that, you know, adds up to doing very well at a really difficult, really big, challenging race. You know, it wasn't just 1 mile or one race that like caused this epiphany that helped me to do this. It was really a lot of different perspective shifts, a lot of different changes, ways that I changed my racing tactics, changed my nutrition tactics, like reframed, you know, really tough days on the trails. This summer has been really hard for every athlete on this team, you know, very hot conditions. That stuff just makes you feel like you're half the athlete that you really are. And just, you know, I'm a big believer in positive affirmations. You know, if someone was to like peel open my brain and get to read my thoughts, it would just be like that kind of like continual positive affirmation, rewiring neural pathways all day long. I've been that way for a really, really long time. I don't try to let any negative self-talk slip in there. I'm a big fan of building the inner coach up. And I think really using this summer as an opportunity to really develop that inner coach and that inner dialogue has been really helpful for me, because I didn't have, you know, a single low moment or a single moment of self-doubt during my race. You know, if something, you know, was going to creep in, I just say, I feel good. If, you know, I'm unsure if I'm going to like do it today, you can do it, you know, like that's it. You know, there's no room for the other stuff. That's how focused I was. That's how focused I often am all the time, which is maybe a little bit crazy. But it's helpful. I find that it's helpful to kind of, to fall back on those basics. You know, I've been fortunate to have a background in that like my whole life since I was 13 with meditation, and gosh, that's like 20 years. So you can really do a lot in that amount of time. But yeah, if you're willing to do that kind of inner work, I think that really helps. It's hard, you know. I felt actually really challenged by being in first place with 20 miles left in that race. You know, I didn't want to feel vulnerable.
Right.
To being.
Sometimes it's easier to be chasing someone than to be like looking over your shoulder metaphorically.
Yeah, totally.
Don't do that literally, ever, really.
That like looking back, you know.
Yeah, that only slows you down. And then best case scenario, you do see someone and then you change your effort accordingly. Like you should be executing on your own effort no matter what.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's not useful until that person passes you. It's really not that useful of information, in my opinion.
And you know what I also really like, and this is something that I feel like you do really well, Zoe. It's like, is that external affirmation when you encounter somebody else on the trail, you know, you tell them, even though you're passing them, you tell them, you look strong, you look great. It's like telling yourself that too.
Exactly.
And I think that can be really, really helpful. Sometimes I feel bad. It was such a close race for the first 20 miles in the men's field. You know, I ran with a couple really great runners.
Pros.
Yeah. And, you know, you talk with them, you chat, you know, there's some conversation that happens. And then, you know, like, well, it's competition. You need to like, you're going to have to like pass them, even though you like them and they're cool and whatnot. I often get challenged by that because I don't love the idea of beating people, but I do like the idea of doing something to the best of my ability. So that often that was a challenge for me. And I found that the positive kind of externalizing some of those positive affirmations, made that a little bit easier for me. It helped to pump me up a little bit, I think, when I needed to like really get the job done. On the last climb, particularly. It's like, you know, you gotta climb 4,000 feet now and none of it's runnable. Go.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And there's the guy right behind you. Okay, awesome. Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Gosh, Zoe, I mean, I feel like you had a really great race too, and all we've done is talk about my race. And
I think your race exemplifies a lot of points that we, you know, try to exemplify.
Yeah.
It's just a more epic story. It's a comeback story.
Yeah, there's a comment here about falling and getting back out there. And I feel like that is, you know, yeah, I took a huge fall on the race on that last ascent. Man, I feel lucky that nothing bad happened to me there, and definitely like took a second to be like, wow.
Am I debilitatingly injured?
It was like, wow, this is like a literal metaphor right now for the whole, you know, process that got you here. I mean, I have had
wouldn't that be an incredible ending to a 3-year journey to just like
to have gone off that cliff would not have been good. Search and rescue.
Alternate ending,
alternate take. What actually happened.
The director's cut.
No hamstring. Like, God. Oh gosh, you know, when you have that fall, but it like everything slows down, and you're like, that's my hamstring, that's my calf, it's gone. That was pulling. Somehow everything was okay. Like, oh my God, that was super bad. Yeah, but I think, you know, and if you're not falling, honestly, I've said this to a few athletes lately, like if you're not falling on the downhill sometimes, I question whether or not you're, you know, exploring your potential. You know, if you're not going out there and failing miserably at a race or screwing up the long run, I question whether or not you're, you know, really giving it your all. I don't want people to go to the well often.
Not every time, right?
Explore
you don't want to fail every time.
Yeah.
Bad is bad. We are not telling you to go balls out every time you put your shoes on. Occasional failure is very healthy.
I think so too. You know, it definitely makes you grow. I think being challenged and being forced to make that choice. Like if you have two choices, I give up or I take this and I use this in a healthy way. I analyze it in a healthy way. I take the good things from it, apply those to next time and move forward, trying not to dwell too much on the past, trying to stay present, especially, you know, that's a really hard thing to do sometimes when you're out on a very long run, is to just be present and be right there. But if you're willing to do that, I think you benefit a lot, and you can maybe accelerate some of the growth that happens, especially in a sport like trail running, which is, I think it's at least as much mental as it is physical, especially when you get into the longer races. I mean, it's not
or if you want to
comfortable.
do well at the shorter stuff. I mean, yeah, I have no idea how you mentally prepare for a 5K. I can't hurt that bad.
Yeah.
I'm unwilling to hurt that bad in that specific way.
Yeah.
I like tantric pain, like hours. Can't do the little micro dose. Too scary.
Gosh. Yeah. I don't know. It's it's for me, it's interesting to sit here and kind of reflect on all of the like things that I could label as failures en route to one really great win. And it's way more mess ups, failures, fall on my face, falls, races that didn't go well, all sorts of stuff, you know, since the beginning that I ever got involved in this. There's way more of that than there is like the wins. But that's what kind of makes the wins even more special, I think, and gives color and context to the entire journey, gives it the meaning that, you know, that I assign it or whatever, you know, like there wouldn't be as much meaning if it wasn't for those things. So, you know, like I tell, you know, my athletes, like, it's not just about the highs. It's as much about the lows, and just being willing to work through that in whatever way works best for you, and developing a strong tool set, whether it's meditation and affirmations, or working with a therapist, or, you know, having a bunch of different like professionals in your corner, you know, like for me, I like, you know, I have a coach, I have like 2 PTs. I have one who helps me with like my cramping and my diaphragm issues for like the last 3 years. And I have one who does dry needling that I see, you know, like Kylie gives me nutrition advice. Like there are so many people and professionals that I have brought into my corner. And granted, I do this professionally and I have that privilege, that option, those opportunities, which is huge and really helps. But, you know, I have sought those resources out. I have made that a priority, and it has helped.
Yeah.
I think whatever like developing your toolbox, your tool set, whatever that looks like for you over time, can be really, really beneficial, you know. Well, a strength coach too, you know, or I have a strength plan from a strength coach.
Yeah. I think, you know, don't ever just read an article and assume you know anything. I feel like the whole first half of my running career, I would like read something about like iron deficiency, strength training. I'd be like, I am an expert now. Like, I'm a journalist. I know how this works. I'm a smart girl. It like, until I actually get to sit in a room with someone and like come up with an action plan that is made for me, none of that really ever made a difference.
Yeah.
So build out a support network when you are able.
Yeah. And you take that support with the proper mindset. You know, I think the learner's mindset, you know, you gain awareness, and then you build that and you put that into action. You know, it takes a lot of accountability and self accountability too. But when you do it and you do it for long enough, the payouts are awesome. I would say, at least for me, this is the best moment that I've had in trail running probably so far.
Yay.
Yeah. Aside from, you know, great coaching stuff that's always happening on a weekly basis, but at least in my personal running journey.
Yeah, it was a big high.
Yeah. Hopefully I don't crash too hard after those post-race blues.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Feel pretty good. Taking some good time off.
Yeah.
Eating a bunch of food. We ate real cheese this weekend.
Yeah.
Loved it.
I might go back on the pizza train, the real pizza train.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Something made out of a cashew just isn't the same.
No. All right. Well, we won't keep you guys. Thanks for listening. We have Coach's Corner this Friday, I think. Yeah, we do. And we've got some questions, but obviously would really appreciate yours. If anything, came to mind, any additional comments or insights regarding how our races went or whatever, nothing is off limits. Feel free. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Have a good week. Bye. Thank you.